Hey, welcome everyone. We'll get started in just about 2 or 3 minutes. Good afternoon. For those of you just joining us, feel free to use the chat box to say hello. Let us know who you are and where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. All right, guys. Good evening. Good evening, good afternoon. I don't want to rush it, right? I want to say hi to our friend Greg McShane. Greg, welcome. We have Dennis from HHS Administration of Children and Families. So important to learn cyber to help children and families. Love that you're here. Feel free to use the chat to say hello, and we'll get started in just about a minute. Hi, Amy from Miami-Dade County.
So I got my notepad all ready. I'm gonna capture all these URLs. You're gonna lay out. I'll never forget the first time I heard you talk about those. I was like, oh my God. I'm trying to look up and find the old account that I had. I've got to be 10 years, more than 10 years ago, who it was with. I would have never known that. And I can't imagine if I had 30 employees, like gulp, right? Now what? So.
All right, well, I have it starting time. So Tom and Sean, if you're good to go, I'd like to kick things off. All right, well, welcome to everyone who dialed in this afternoon. This is the Employee Cyber Hygiene Strategies webinar. And we're excited today to teach you some proven tactics and tools to reduce your cyber vulnerability for upwards of 90%. So we had this as a session at the All Hazards Consortium's January Resiliency Summit. And just the wonderful information that came out of it, both as an employee, but also just as a private citizen, is amazing. So we're so glad that Sean was able to return to teach this to us today and give us some time to answer some questions. Because I remember we ran out of time at the summit, I believe, Sean.
Just a little bit. It was close.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Laura Johnson. I'm the Director of Conferences and Events for the nonprofit organization All Hazards Consortium. And feel free to use the chat to say hi, put any comments, ask questions, and we also have the Q&A function open for you today as well. So this time is yours as much as it is anyone's. So feel free to take advantage of that and ask us what you want to know. Before we get started, just wanted to mention some other upcoming events that the All Hazards Consortium is offering, and all of this is complimentary. The third event in our cyber security series is cyber cloaking. How do you hide from hackers? And that will be May 18th, a lunch and learn, so noon Eastern Standard Time. On June 1st, we'll have information about lodging during disasters. That'll be a 4 p.m. webinar. And then we also just finalized our 911 systems, how COVID accelerated innovation to 911, sped things up and changed the way we looked at it. So that's going to be June 10th. So feel free to visit us at our website, ahcusa.org, and click under events and register yourself. So now I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the All Hazards Consortium, Tom Moran. Tom?
Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone. Sometime last year, I think it was December, I was invited to be on a webinar. Okay, great. I'm on quite a few on cyber, which I'm on quite a few of those as well. And it was a series of talks, and Sean was one of the speakers. I had not met Sean not too long before that, but anyway, I listened to Sean's presentation, and I got to tell you, I came out of that with tangible, practical, operational tools I put to use that day. When we got off the webinar, I was telling Sean before it started, I took this stuff and checked out, and I couldn't believe how many areas, at least half a dozen, that my old emails or current emails or other things I had done had been compromised. Unreal. Sean works for the Fusion Center in Pennsylvania, and he's tied into this network of Fusion Center analysts. A lot of information. So a shout out to Sean and the Fusion Center in Pennsylvania, but also all of them, because they do a lot of good work on a number of topics, not just cyber, right? So today we wanted to specifically invite Sean back, take our time and go through this, because we rushed him in January. I apologize for that, but I'm really glad he's back, and I'm glad you all are dialing in to hear this. So this will be great. So you're going to hear us mention today about the SICE. If we get to, there we go, the SICE. Some of you that are new, the SICE is a private sector framework, legal framework to share sensitive information with each other and with government. It provides legal protection from FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. We get a lot of frivolous requests, used to at least. So the SICE is protected from that. So people can plan and talk and share information privately without the fear of media or non-operational folks getting involved. The second thing it does, it helps to organize the private sector around specific use cases or problems that they can work in committee, right? So, and we use this as a way to do integrated planning and develop a lot of information solutions. So I'll put it in the chat in just a minute. You can register with the SICE at no cost at siceusa.org, and that'll plug you into the system. You'll get future updates and so forth. So the SICE is the framework that we house a lot of the information and training and notes and things like that are coming out of the events we do. So, as well as some other things. So I want to welcome you all. I'm anxious to jump into this. So welcome, Sean. And Laura, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Tom. Happy to hear from Sean Sadikowski. As Tom mentioned, he's with the Pennsylvania State Police Fusion Center, Bureau of Criminal Investigation. So Sean, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share so you can grab it if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to introduce yourself a little further, and the floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so let's share the screen first. We'll get everything lined up.
There you go.
Okay, can everybody see?
Yes, you're good.
Yep.
All right, so brief intro. My name's Sean Stakowski. I work at the Pennsylvania State Police at the Pennsylvania Criminal Intelligence Center in a unit called the Critical Infrastructure and Key Resource Unit. And so what this does is it provides an area and a way for private sector to get a hold of law enforcement for things that might not reach the level of criminal activity or criminal involvement. More or less, it is for things that are suspicious, for tips and leads, for maybe repetitive, say, trespassing or surveillance of a critical infrastructure or a key resource operation. So critical infrastructure and key resources, anything that makes Pennsylvania move. It can be transportation, it can be the energy sector, and then an umbrella that crosses all of them is the cyber sector. So cyber attacks are becoming more and more prevalent, and they're also becoming, they're also targeting multiple sectors, some sectors at the same time, some sectors that were previously hardened against, say, physical attacks are now being opened up to cyber attacks. And so what we're looking to do is put more eyes on the problem. The more people that we have looking for something suspicious, or the more people that I can teach and that they can teach other people on what to look for in suspicious activity, suspicious emails, the easier my job and the more cyber safe Pennsylvania's infrastructure can be. A couple quick things on my background. I have a background in criminal justice. I've been working with the state for a little over 8 years and coming up on 3 years with Pennsylvania State Police. So let's get into this. Today, we are talking about current cyber threats, and also we're going to delve into cyber hygiene tactics, things that you can do to protect yourself, to take home and protect accounts associated with your business, but also accounts associated with your personal life, personal email accounts, your Facebook account, things that have, they make a tangible difference right here, right now. Okay, give me one sec. Okay, I have a couple of different sources here. I'm going to stop my video. My voice will continue, and then I'll be able to pull a couple of different pieces of info and talk to you about them. Okay, so we're moving on to ransomware. We're going to start with a broad topic, and then we're going to hone in on some of the very specific things I've seen in the past couple of months. Okay, so with ransomware, ransomware remains a prevalent cyber attack. It's what gathers the most media coverage. It is it's interesting to read about. It draws people's attention. Historically, it had a political motive, and it does considerable, or it did considerable monetary damage. When it would hit a company, it would hit them to the tune of millions or tens of millions of dollars. And over the course of, say, 2 years, the ransom amount, the amount requested, has continued to grow. So at the beginning, it was thousands, then it got bigger, hundreds of thousands, then millions, and then tens of millions. But in addition to ransomware, we're starting to see the data breach component. So data breaches, they tend to be smaller, but they happen more frequently. It seems easier to break into smaller organizations. The smaller organizations, they would have less of a budget for IT, but they would tend to be, let's say, vendors and contractors. So they might still have access to that highly specialized or privileged or sensitive information that a big, highly protected company would be able to defend against with their big IT budget. So typically the data that's collected in a data breach, it's either sold on the dark web, or it's being used as leverage to further extort the organization. Just this past week, we've had a rather large data breach, relatively new cyber group known as, I believe it's Baybuk, but I'll spell it. It's B-A-B-U-K. They just accessed a server in the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. And so they exfiltrated somewhere around 250 gigs of data. And this data was current cases. This was previous investigations. It was very sensitive information. It was privileged information. Typically, Baybuk, the Baybuk group, would deploy ransomware and then exfiltrate data. However, it seems that they're moving only toward a data exfiltration business plan. Yeah, I guess that's a way to call it. They're moving towards a business plan. So they're looking to extort whatever their target is, and then use that data that they collect for leverage to get the ransomware, but it's on the threat of releasing this information. And so the police department, they could still access their data, but the possibility of that data being released is what caused the rest of the issues here. So this picture is not what hacking looks like. This happens in the movies, the floating characters around the screen, that suspicious looking guy with the hat, typing in a single password and gaining access to a random company's entire network. That's all movies. That's all sensationalism. It makes for a good movie. I would totally watch it, but hacking is not as visually entertaining as this. So the cyber attacks that we're seeing, though I call them new, as we go through this presentation, I'll refer to recent cyber attacks or new cyber attacks. The technique behind them, the underlying technique, it remains the same for, let's say, past 5 years or 10 years. It just matters how that attack is delivered. So one of those things is called the environment that the attacker creates, or the environment that the attacker socially engineers. This is more so what hacking looks like. This is more so what hacking looks like to an IT professional. Don't worry, stay with me on this. We're gonna move past the technical stuff, and we're gonna show you stuff that you can perfectly understand. In this case, a hacker is running an automated program to see if there are open ports, open IP addresses, ways to get into a computer server, an unprotected computer network, a company's computer system, or anything like that. All of the information on this screen makes sense to a hacker. Half of the information makes sense to me, and it's okay if none of it makes sense to you. No big deal. The point of this slide is that this is the boring type of attack that we continue to see. So some of the current threats that we're going to talk about here and now, things that we're seeing in the past couple of months, are these 4 things. Above and beyond everything else, we continue to see business email compromise. These are especially popular with small and medium businesses, businesses that have a somewhat large social media presence or online presence, but they might not be the large company that can devote thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to an IT budget or a cybersecurity budget. So business email compromise hitting small and medium businesses. Speaking of small and medium businesses, we're also going to look at vendors and contractors. Just because they don't have that budget to devote to the IT. Also going to mention imitation websites and how imitation websites are based or pop up around current events. And this will all make sense as I progress further through here. So starting out, I want to try to give any kind of visual representations that I can. I can talk somebody's ear off, but if I can show you a picture of it, if you also receive something similar, like in your email, or you come across it online on Facebook, on the internet in general, if you remember these pictures, or you see something that looks like this, hopefully it'll make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It'll remind you of my voice, and it'll have you slow your thought process down and actually look into this and say, wait, does this kind of stuff make sense? Okay, so just a couple of points on this image right here. So this is an example of an immediate request. It is supposedly from a CEO to a chief financial officer. It's marked high importance, and they want a wire transfer of money. All of these things should make the hair on your neck stand up. These are all odd. And this is also something that should be easily identified as a spam email. A lot of times with the spam email and email filters improving, you are seeing less and less of these on company emails. However, sometimes they still slip through. And so remembering them, keeping them in mind, goes a long way, especially because this email can be changed from CEO to payroll department or human resource department, and the amount of money can change. The person that they're targeting can change. Anything can change with this email. The underlying idea is the same, though. Doing something to rush you through authorizing money in a set period of time. Next example on here. So this is an alleged email from Bob Bossman to the chief of Acme Corp. So the chief is requesting W-2s for all employees from Susan, the payroll manager. So the email chain reinforces the idea that this is an authentic request. In actuality, nothing came from Bob Bossman to the chief of Acme Corp. In this example, the chief's email was compromised, and so they used his email to imitate him and then request, in this case, W-2s privileged to information that they could later sell on the dark web. Now, this is a humorous one. Tony Stark is requesting an account change for his direct deposit check. The new account is controlled by the cyber actor. And this example, just another way that a bad actor can use a business email compromise to steal money. This is an example. However, we have had recent suspicious activity that was luckily caught dealing with this same situation. A payroll department was contacted to change a direct deposit account. There was a lack of verification by the payroll department, and the account was also changed. It was noticed that this was a fictitious account, I believe, by the bank. Someone had to call and verify like that an account was open. So luckily, the direct deposit check was not, direct deposit account was not changed. And so I believe it was a school, didn't have any payroll department, didn't have any payroll issues. So a couple of similar traits with business email compromise. So a couple of things right off the bat. The emails, they tend to be unexpected and come from a high-level position, a CEO, a contractor, a vendor, often marked as urgent, and often sent to a lower level employee, someone who would have the ability to fulfill the request, but also someone who would be less likely to question the email. More or less, if you get an email from your boss or your supervisor, you would be less likely to question that. You don't really want to question your boss. This is one of those things that goes into the crafting of a business email compromise email, the initial spam email. There's typically an urgency associated with the request. And also, people tend to miss small details when under pressure. And so when you put urgent on there, then you can also throw in a website that has a different domain or an email address that has a different domain associated with it. And if you are looking at something and you are thinking slowly and examining things, you'll catch that email. But when it's urgent on a Friday before the Christmas holiday, those are the times that things often slip through the cracks. Another thing we saw in the past 6 months or so, malicious attachments. So email attachments are nothing new. In this example, this was a package delivery confirmation email that actually came to me on that date, on 12/3. So this was December of 2020. And so I mentioned at the beginning using current events. Believe me, Amazon, eBay, and any kind of online shopping, my best friends during the holiday. So this came in, I didn't really think too much of it. I figured, okay, I ordered something. But on this package delivery confirmation was a malicious attachment. So it ended up being a zip file, and you don't see them coming from Amazon. You don't see them coming from eBay. So at that point in time, it made me a little bit suspicious. So we're going to take a closer look at this email attachment. All right, so email attachment is listed as info.zip. Okay, I guess it kind of makes sense, info about my package delivery, but inside was some kind of odd document, a little bit weird. So anyway, inside this secured malicious zip file ultimately is a Word macro. And what it tries to do is allow my computer to contact the computer of the cyber attacker and download just a small program that says, hey, I've installed myself onto this target computer, and this is the way you can communicate. And it'll give an IP address, it'll give a few other bits and details, and then it'll just sit and stay dormant. The hacker that sent this sent it to me and sent it to a bunch of other people, and just lets it sit for a while. And as the email attachment progresses, as it infiltrates different email accounts, different systems, different companies, maybe even company networks, it categorizes all of the info and the way to communicate with each of those devices. After a while, the hacker can look back at this, and just like that boring number slide, a couple of slides back, the hacker can pull specific information as to the most likely or beneficial targets. And then he can craft a few more malicious programs to target those devices and those companies. Oh, almost forgot about this. That document, it was the funny file name document. Upon opening that, even Word gives you a warning saying that this document was created on an old version, and they wanted you to enable something. The enabling content was actually enabling the macro, and it's actually something that Word doesn't really do too much anymore. And so even Word realized that this is a little bit suspicious. Are you sure you want to do this? Couple of other things that we've seen, and I'll actually have a great picture coming up of an imitation Facebook page, but still. So we'll talk about imitation websites and social media pages. So the imitation websites use login pages for Outlook, DocuSign, just about any other commonly available and commonly used software platform. To get to that false page, they'll use these URL shortening services. Bitly is one of the most common. So you see this www.bit.ly, and then a random string of characters afterward. And what this does is shorten a long website address to something that's easily copied and either emailed or texted. Problem with this is you can't see where that Bitly address is actually going to take you. So a couple of examples of Bitly addresses. On the left-hand side is a sign-in for Microsoft Outlook. Most companies that have an Outlook email system would use a sign-in is either similar to this or identical to this. So the Outlook logon page, it is spot on. Everything looked authentic. Everything was in the right place. All the margins matched up. The only giveaway on this was after I went to the Bitly link, it actually redirected me to a new domain that ended in .cn, the letter CN, meaning this domain was hosted in China. There would be no reason for me to log into an Outlook account hosted in China. And so at that point in time, I already had a suspicion, but at that point in time, it was evident that this was a scam campaign. On the right-hand side, the DocuSign email, it looks authentic. Everything matches what would come out. The problem is the link down in the bottom right to view documents, it actually takes you to an obscure website, which is also hidden by a Bitly address. And then to add insult to injury, the DocuSign attempts to download a document, which is a malicious document. So if you go there expecting to do something, you click the link to go to DocuSign, and you're presented with this alert, hey, download this document. If you're going quickly and if you're not thinking through the entire process or where this email originated from, that is as easy as it is for you to catch something on your computer. Now, don't think that this can happen to your small or medium business. If it has a social media presence or really any kind of online presence, it is susceptible to an imitation attack. What makes a difference is how quickly you handle it. And so this happened earlier in this year. So if you notice, this is a fictitious website for the Pennsylvania Department of Labor with an extra U in there. This was on Facebook, and it also had activity. The message below is activity. It says within 3 hours of me actually seeing this. The bad thing is this happened. The good thing is Pennsylvania addressed this immediately, like within the course of a few hours. The page was taken down, contact was made with everyone that we had to, and we took care of this imitation Facebook page. But just like that, I'm snapping my fingers right now. Any kind of imitation page can come up. Doesn't have to be a Department of Labor and Industry. It can be whatever your small business is or whatever your medium business is. The important thing is how quick you can address that. Now, without fail, new email campaigns pop up around current events. They play actually a very large role in the scam emails that we see on a yearly basis. Last year, we saw an incredible amount of spam and scam campaigns associated especially with the general election and COVID vaccines. They were the top two producers of scam campaigns. Due to the COVID restrictions and the relaxation of the restrictions, I expect summer vacation and vacation themed email campaigns to start up soon. Some of the most popular social engineering tactics for vacation campaigns tend to be the free hotel stay, the free flight, and the secret shopper emails. So if you get any of those emails, especially unsolicited emails with those topics, be extremely skeptical of them. Nothing is free in life. And so the vast majority, if not all of them, are going to aim to somehow compromise your system or your PII information, your personal information. So all of these slides are examples of smaller scale, not very sophisticated current threats that we've seen in the last few months. The problem is, even though they're sophisticated, even though they're smaller scale, they're still common. And if 100 emails are sent out and the hacker gets a 1% return, he got one person back on those 100 emails. If he sends out 10,000, he gets 100 potential targets. 100 people may fall for the emails that he sends out. And after he crafts that initial email, it takes him, I don't know, a couple of seconds to continually send them out. So it takes him almost no time at all to have a potential 1% return on investment. So let's talk about some software vulnerabilities. Software vulnerabilities have had a large part in some of the most recent cyber attacks that we've seen. Off the top of my head, the SolarWinds breach of December of 2020, excuse me, and the Washington, D.C. Metro Police breach of a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Software vulnerabilities include out-of-date operating systems, unpatched software, especially for standalone devices, and also software glitches that remain unpatched. So let's take a look here. I have Windows and I have iOS listed. Reason for it is this. Hackers aim to target some of the most common operating systems or mobile devices. Windows 10 and iOS, some of the most popular devices and systems. Windows, 80% of computer systems, global computer systems, use Windows. That's 80%. The remaining 20% are covered by Mac OS and Linux users. Across the board, though, any kind of operating system, Windows, Mac, or Linux, will have periodic updates, and those updates will address out-of-date systems, unpatched software, or new glitches. With iOS, actually, we'll talk about iOS and we'll talk about Android as well. iOS, typically software companies will design software to run for a certain period of time. In the case of iOS, iOS devices, iPhones, iPads, anything that runs on iOS tends to run on a 5-year update time frame. So your device will receive iOS updates for 5 years. And this will be iOS software updates to improve to prevent glitches or address glitches, and also security updates to plug newly discovered system vulnerabilities or FaceTime bugs or just about any other bug that the Apple engineers have found and have determined a way to fix. So for Windows, the current home version of Windows should be 20H2 and then this build 19042. Current enterprise version is version is 1809. Reason for two different versions is your home version is what you're going to use at home. Your enterprise version is typically what your business will roll out to all of your desktop computers. The enterprise version, despite the fact that the number is a little bit lower, is currently up to date with all of the security patches. These are both up to date with current security patches. Now, incidentally, version 1909 will reach its end of service in 6 days or so, in 7 days. This is important. So if you have a computer and you don't have automatic updates turned on, you might not have the current version. And we're going to go through how to check for current updates and how to make sure the automatic updates are on. The second thing is, even if you allow your system, this is specific to Windows, to install the update, if you're the type of person to let your computer run 24/7, and yes, I'm also guilty of that, the update won't fully install. When you finally do go to restart your computer, you'll notice it'll say update and restart. It'll have that option after clicking shutdown. So you have to periodically restart your computer to actually finalize the updates. And so it would be a good idea just to double check to see, one, how long ago you restarted it, and two, if there's any pending updates. So let's take a look here to check for updates. If you want to go through this right now, we can. Easy to get to. You go to Start, you search for Windows Update, and you'll see a button there and it says check for updates. And the best information you can see is your system is fully updated or your system is up to date. If it says anything else, updates are available, you would go through the update process. And then, like I mentioned, make sure you restart your computer for those updates to fully take effect. And lastly, while you're in there, to make sure that automatic updates are turned on, it would be Start, Windows Update, then there'll be an Advanced Options button and select Automatic. In the grand scheme of things, checking for automatic updates can be done quicker than I can actually read the instructions for. So if you're concerned that this is going to be way in depth or take too long, no, it's not. If you're familiar with the system, you could probably do it before the time I finish talking about this. Okay, and so with iOS, so current iOS is iOS 14.5. It just came out, I think, a week ago or so. A couple of key points with this. The newest version of iOS will run on phones all the way back to iPhone 6S. So it has to have the S on the end. If you have a regular 6 or anything before that, you won't be able to run the newest iOS. And that might open you up to some software vulnerabilities, security vulnerabilities that will remain unpatched because you won't have the newest stuff. As long as your phone is newer than a 6S, to make sure your automatic updates are turned on, it would be following the run through right here. By all means, take a screenshot of this. You can take this home, make sure all of your devices are fully updated and automatic updates are turned on. Another key point on iOS updates. To update, your device needs to be on a wireless internet connection. Android devices, which I'll talk about next, can actually update over the air, which makes it a little bit easier to update them. And it's just one more thing that you have to consider. So if you don't normally let your iOS device connect to a Wi-Fi access point, you may want to do that and then let it do its full update and make sure that you ultimately get to 14.5. And now we're on to Android. Android and iOS kind of release security patches a little bit differently. iOS releases them when they have addressed various bugs that came up or were discovered. Android releases monthly scheduled security patches. And so as of right now, we're on the March 2021 security patch. However, now that we're into May, I'm expecting to see the April patch. So typically the patch runs 1 month behind the current month that we're in. Current Android version is 11, and to make sure that automatic updates are turned on, it is just a little bit easier in Android. Settings, search for security policy updates, and you'll see a button that should either be on or off, and you just want to make sure that it's on so it's enabled. So after the software vulnerabilities, we're also into hardware vulnerabilities. So classic cars are cool, Commodore 64s are cool, old Nintendos are cool. What is not cool are old firewalls, old VPNs, and old standalone email servers. Incidentally, those 3 things that I mentioned have had some kind of involvement in the recent data breaches that have been in the news. So hackers aim for vulnerabilities in any kind of outdated software, but also any kind of outdated and old hardware. I mentioned these before, Pulse Secure and SolarWinds, they come to mind just off the top of my head. They both deal with outdated hardware and also outdated systems that didn't have the appropriate cybersecurity. All right, stand by for 1 sec. So we're on to initial mitigation strategies. This is coming up to one of my favorite parts. Hopefully we'll be able to get back to in-person presentations and training because, you know, I kind of like to put some people on the spot. I'll explain why in a sec. So initial mitigation strategies. Be suspicious of suspicious email traits. Those common traits that are shared among most, if not all, scam emails, the ones that I went over a few slides back. Keep that stuff in mind. And the main thing is, if it makes you think twice, or if you just get a funny feeling reading that, like it's out of the ordinary, it's not a typical procedure that your business or your company would do, it's probably a scam campaign. Now, we're getting into default usernames or usernames and passwords in general. And I'll mention these and I'll go farther into depth. Changing default usernames and passwords. When you buy a new Ring doorbell camera or a new Wi-Fi access point or anything that runs on wireless at your house, typically it'll come with a default username and password. 75% of the time, the owner will set that device up, but won't change the username and the password from the default setting. Only recently have devices and manufacturers made it so that as you're setting up the device, there's no way around using the defaults. They actually make you update it to a unique username and a unique password. Also, another mitigation, using strong passwords to prevent brute force attacks. And then using a password manager to juggle all of these strong passwords, and then also installing those updates and those patches as soon as they come out. So let's talk about passwords. In person, these questions make people smile, and then I also get a few groans out of the last question. So does your password have numbers? Does it have capitals, and does it have symbols? And I hope people are smiling and they say, yeah, we have all of those, and all of those are good. 2 more questions. Does your password use a word from the English language? And then the last question that I get a few groans on. Have you ever used this password or form of this password anywhere else? And I'll get people looking down at their shoes. They don't want to make eye contact with me. And I know that password reuse is strong with that one. So password reuse, major problem. If you have an email account and you have a work account, and your personal email account and your work account both share the same username and password, if one of them gets breached, there is a very high likelihood that the other one will get breached unless you change that password ASAP. Once you notice a breach, an alert on any account that uses the same password, go to all your other accounts and change them. And now that you're going to those other accounts and changing them, we're going to change them to a stronger password. Which then comes to this. A while back, somebody called me out on my quote, strong passwords, use strong passwords. And they said, what is a strong password? Real simple question. I didn't have a slide prepped. I didn't have an explanation for it. So I made one up. This just walks you through the way of making a strong password. We're dealing with strawberries all the way down. And you notice starting with the password of strawberry, coming all the way down the list, ending with a very strong password that has nothing, what seems like nothing to do with strawberries. Point is, adding more stuff to your password increases the strength of that password. And ultimately, if you get down to a passphrase where you come up with a sentence and then you just use the first letter of every word in that sentence, it creates a very good password, a password that is incredibly difficult for a hacker to crack with brute force techniques, which is just throwing random letters and numbers at a login prompt. So screenshot this if you haven't already, and then we're going to move on. Another thing to increase the strength of passwords, multi-factor authorization, which would be like a second password. You would log in and then you would get a text message or telephone call or an email code, and you would have to enter those. Many places are doing that already. If your business is not doing that, maybe look into enabling it. And there are some places online, I think Gmail, possibly Facebook, large and secure social media companies in general are giving the option of multi-factor authorization. It's not mandatory, so a lot of people don't utilize it. However, if you have the ability, you could go to your settings in whatever account you're using and look to see if you can enable MFA, or sometimes it'll say the number 2 FA for two-factor authorization. All right, NordPass.com releases every year the top 200 most common passwords. I love reading these. I love seeing what the top 10 are. And every year, the worst passwords that make the top of this list are always password 123456, password 1234, things like that. Common passwords that any common person would read and say, no, you've got to be kidding me. That can't be secure. Yet they still make the top list of most used passwords every year. All right, so we're coming into this this good site. This site is called Have I Been Pwned? And so what this site does is it allows you to search for your email address. And actually, I think they expanded it now to your phone number as well, and compare it to existing data breaches to see if the information that you typed in, either your email address or your phone number, is present on any of those data breaches. And so the way it works is this: if it finds that email address, it tells you the company and the date the breach happened. And what you should do, or what this information is supposed to make you do, is two things. So one, it would make you go to the breached site and change your password ASAP. That should be an obvious one. So if that site has been breached, go there, change that password. And as long as you still have access to that account, your account is now secured again. Now, the second thing is this: people might not realize this. If you use that old password anywhere else, password reuse, like I mentioned before, go to any other site with that same password and change it. Because if the hacker has a list of usernames and passwords, they also have the ability to throw that known password at any other website or at any other company during their next attempted data breach. And with a smile, I say, let's give this a try. This is my own personal Gmail account. So I've had this since 2004, and that was way back when the free storage for Gmail was 1 gig, I believe. And it was also sign up by invitation only. So I had an IT friend, and he gave me a link to sign up for this brand new free 1 gig of storage space Gmail Google address. So anyway, I've had this email for quite a while, and as expected, it was included in a few breaches. So top of the list, Dropbox, mid-2012. Back then, I used simple passwords. I didn't know any better. A lot of other people back then didn't really know any better. So good news is Dropbox, after they learned of this, they forced password resets for everyone, which means the next time that I logged in there, I couldn't get right into my data. I actually had to jump through some hoops and then put in a new password. And then only after doing that, I was able to get into my old documents. It's a good step of protection that larger companies can put in place. So let's see, the next one, MyFitnessPal. I went in to change a password for MyFitnessPal to something harder as well. I can't remember if it had a basic password to it or if I had changed it to something a little bit more difficult. But anyway, now it is something much more secure. Last example was Zynga. And I knew Zynga was a game manufacturer. I didn't know who. But anyway, it says creator of Words with Friends. And yes, I played Words with Friends. In this situation, this is a pointer. It's telling me, hey, if I have a Zynga account, I might want to look into this. Good news is I never actually made up a Zynga account to like save my high scores and things like that. I only used Words with Friends as an application on my cell phone, which means that yes, my email address was probably included in this, but no passwords were included in this data breach. All right, so ongoing mitigation strategies. What we just went over was the initial mitigation strategies, but ongoing. This should be things that you can use every day, but you can also use going forward. I mentioned a couple of times about urgency in a lot of the scam campaigns. So to mitigate urgency, slow down your thought process. The social engineering in scam emails tries to speed everything up. And so if you take a step back, if you actually let the email sit for a sec, go get a drink of water, go get a cup of coffee, and come back and read it again, you'll start seeing things that pop out, just clues that give the email away that it's not something typically done by your business. Use a multi-factor authorization mindset. What I'm talking about here is if you get a request if you get an unsolicited request from someone in your business or even from a vendor outside of your business, and you read it and it looks odd or it looks just a little bit extreme, maybe they're asking for quite a lot of money or quite a lot of information or quite a lot of something, multi-factor authorization mindset should make you think, hey, maybe I should call this person and ask them, hey, did you just send me an email asking for this stuff? And the way I know this works is because I've had reports that it has worked. An odd request comes in, the person that received it called the boss or called the CEO and said, hey, did you just send this? And the boss, being woken up from his sleepy slumber, said, no, I haven't the slightest clue what you were talking about. This whole situation or these types of situations happen right around the holidays, happen on a Friday, happen on a Saturday when there are barely any people staffing a business. So keep that odd request in mind and also keep the time in mind that it comes in. Be skeptical of these three things: unsolicited emails. If you get something that you weren't even expecting, weren't looking for, wasn't even on your horizon, that's very suspicious. Skeptical of unknown email links. If you get this link and it's not a place you normally go to, I personally don't open those links. I report them to the IT department. If it comes down to it, call the person that sent it to you, especially if it's a known person, and ask, hey, what's this link dealing with? And then anything that is out of the ordinary. I can't tell you what your company does or doesn't do, but I can tell you, consider if the request is odd. And if it is, then follow your company procedures. Report it, request verification from it, forward it to the IT department or anything else along those lines. And lastly, I just added this one: establish a password update time frame. I'm guilty of this. I've been using the same passwords for a couple of different accounts for long periods of time. Typically, high security accounts would update passwords after a 3-month time frame or a 6-month time frame. Even if your business doesn't mandate that, or even if your personal email doesn't do that, which I don't think many do, put a reminder in your phone, update it every 6 months, update it every year. Just that little extra bit of security may go a long way. If there's a breach that you don't know about and you don't change your password in time, it might make you the victim. If you update your password on a time frame, it might negate or mitigate that risk. Okay, a couple more ongoing mitigation strategies. Now, keep in mind, I'm mentioning a lot of these things. Understandably, there are businesses that cannot do all of these just based on the product they sell or the service they sell. If you can, see if you can separate your business and your personal email accounts and your business and your personal social media accounts. We tend to see in small businesses, especially small businesses that have just started out, have a few employees, and are looking to get their word out. What better way to get your word out as for a new small business than to tell your Facebook friends about it using your personal Facebook page? Doing that opens up a hacker who compromises one of those. If he compromises a personal email account, he can also then move on to a business account because they would be tied together. And then same way with social media. And then this one right at the end. This is something I haven't talked about in a little while, logging into sites with your existing credentials. So I'll show you a picture on the next slide here to show what I mean. I'm calling them shared credentials. When you go to a site, brand new site, and it says, hey, do you want to use your Facebook or your Gmail address or your Apple ID to log in? For convenience, yes, it is convenient to do that. From a security standpoint, absolutely not. If I can make a recommendation, I personally do not do this ever. I always create a new account for any new website I'm going to. In the event that the site that you are logging into with your Facebook credentials gets hacked, there's a possibility that your username and your password for Facebook also gets collected. There's a possibility that they can access your contact list on Facebook or make posts to your wall on Facebook. All of that could serve to damage a business or to collect sensitive information from the contacts that you gained through that business. Point is, it would hurt your credibility or hurt your business credibility. A couple more ideas to think about as a business owner and operator. Email phishing tests. These are just a few that I pulled out. I've taken them. They make you think a little bit. They have questions that are obvious, but then they also have questions that are a little bit more difficult. You have to look more closely as to what the emails are looking at, what the phishing requests are doing. But the good thing is, depending, or it doesn't matter which way you answer, if you get it right or if you get it wrong, they'll still explain why the message or the email example is or is not a phishing request or a scam email or anything else along those lines. So even if you know it, if the coworker sitting behind you doesn't know it, it just opens up a way of communication. Hopefully someone would pipe up and say, hey, wait, that looks fine to me. What's wrong with that? And then it opens that communication to point out, oh, well, hey, that email address or that domain looks a little bit weird. In addition, the federal government offers a very good, a fully encompassing site. It is from CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Association, or agency, sorry, available at CISA.gov. And then in here, they have all kinds of other links to specific ransomware information, but also they'll do new threats coming down the pipeline or new threats that have just been noticed. They have toolkits in case you have, in case you get hit with an old ransomware attack. They can walk you through removal of some types of ransomware. And then they also have resources. Here I show resources for K-12 education infrastructure. And then there are also other resources once you go to that website. So screenshot this if you haven't already. All right, a couple of final thoughts. Decreasing your attack surface is one of the best things that you can do to improve your cybersecurity and improve your cyber hygiene. The smaller attack surface you have, the less attack surface for a hacker to get you on. Business email compromises, all of those examples that I gave you, plus anything new that I can't even predict, will most likely share the same traits. They'll target all infrastructure sectors with the same traits. It'll be urgency, it'll be unexpected, it'll be odd requests, it'll be suspicious links, and it'll just be things that are out of the ordinary. Update systems quickly, and also keep in mind that the systems include your desktops, your laptops, but also your mobile devices. I remember hearing more than, I think it was 60% of all holiday shopping was done the past year on mobile devices. Mobile devices is just where everyone is at because that's what you have on you at any given point in time. Key thing to remember though, your business or your personal devices are only as strong as the weakest one. So if you update all except one of them, that one will be the most susceptible and may let malware get into your internal network. Using strong and unique passwords, as well as a password manager to juggle all of those. And lastly, reporting suspicious activity to your IT department. You don't know how to fix, or you don't have to know how to fix it. You don't have to know how to mitigate it. The important thing is that you know who to send something suspicious to, and that is IT. So any kind of suspicious activity reporting or suspicious activity in general, we would like to hear about it. If you don't feel comfortable telling us directly, your IT department can get a hold of us. The email address there is sp-protectpa@pa.gov. And the type of information that we're looking for, especially on emails and any kind of scam activities, are the email itself in its entirety, including headers. So IT professionals will understand what that is. And also any kind of contact information. If the scam is based around telephone numbers, those are important. Those are things that we would be able to use to watch for current trends coming up and investigate any kind of activity. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this presentation right now. If you have any questions, I don't know if anything was asked on the chat yet, but feel free to ask away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. That was awesome. And I took a lot of notes myself. I'm definitely guilty of some of those practices, so very helpful.
No problem.
So Crystal Jones asked the same question that I personally wanted to ask you. What's a good password app to use on your phone? And how do you, I mean, you now will, if you change your password for everything, you'll have a ton of passwords. Do you write them down? Do you keep them in the spreadsheet? What do you recommend?
Okay, good deal. So I do get that question a lot. I wish that I could recommend one specific one. I can't because of my position. However, I can give you these pointers. Password managers come in a few different varieties. Actually, hold on, stand by. Perfect. Thank you for doing that. And let me turn my camera back on here.
Yeah.
Oops. Come on, camera. There we go. Okay, so password managers come in a couple of different varieties. You have desktop-based ones and you have mobile device-based ones. And then on both of those sides, you have free and you have paid version. The password manager itself, being paid or free, is not too terribly important rather than the amount of reviews and the amount of downloads that it has. And so when I downloaded the manager that I use, I looked at how many other people downloaded the same thing, how many reviews it had, and what the most common reviews said. And so I actually switched from one password manager to another because I was having a problem with the password manager and other people were reporting the same thing. And so it couldn't do what I needed it to do. And so then I switched to another password manager. But in all of the research, I was working with programs that had been downloaded, I think it was 1 million times, 5 million times. And so based on that, I put faith in the password manager creator that they would give me a secure product, something that will do exactly what it's supposed to do and not leak any of my information.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. If anybody else listening has a question, feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A function.
Hey, Sean, this time, just a couple questions. I had made a note here. I apologize, my internet connection went down. We're having a bad storm here, so I was in and out a few times. You touched on one was the password manager. The other one I was going to ask you was, how often should I be you said, I thought annually. Do I need to do that annually if I have a really good, like I use LastPass, right? LastPass is a fee-based service, right?
Perfect.
And it generates, I couldn't even begin to repeat what they are. They're 16 digits and it's all over the place. I don't even know how they do it. It's auto-generated. Do I need to refresh those every year, or what's your recommendation there?
Okay, so the longer
I use that for personal and business, right? So I have one place and put them all. Okay.
Anywhere that uses a password, you should use a strong password. You can use a password that is randomly created by a password manager. All of those things are good. Recommendations for passwords. I believe recent federal guidelines say 12 characters or longer. So if you're using 16, that's good. The dilemma comes down to this. When you get to the point of, say, 16 characters, the time that it would take to brute force that password, you're talking about, I believe it would be years to brute force crack that password. But the sticking point is this: if that password, even if it's 16 characters long, was involved in a breach that the targeted company didn't tell anyone about, now your password's compromised. It doesn't matter if it's 16 characters long or 60. Okay. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying a periodic update, a 6-month, a 1-year update cycle would be good.
Okay. Got it. And of course that goes for the password to get into LastPass or whatever service people are using, right?
Yep.
They've got to update those as well. Okay, that makes sense.
And another thing to consider. You have your update cycle on passwords, right? Like, let's say you do a 6-month time frame of passwords.
Yeah.
LastPass allows you to copy and paste right in, right? You don't have to manually type out the password.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually prompts you if you want to use the one that they've stored without showing me what it is, right? So if somebody's
perfect. Yeah. So changing that password, It doesn't matter. You can change it to something completely different. It's a couple of clicks of a mouse and then you're done.
Right.
I think
Oh.
that few seconds of time goes above and beyond keeping yourself cyber secure.
Okay. And the last one I had was, I have an iPhone and what's it called? Keychain, or the phone automatically stores in passwords. Like what's your recommendation on, Apple? I forget what they call it. I thought it was keychain.
They store their passwords. It's typically in the browser. And so if you enter a new password, it'll come up with that message that says, do you want to save this password for later use? Consider this: browsers, a Safari browser on iOS, or an Android browser, or Chrome or Firefox. Their primary obligation is to display the internet. Their secondary benefit is to store a password or do a couple of other things, but they're always secondary, which means that if you're using LastPass, it's the primary responsibility of LastPass is to deal with passwords. So personally, I don't use any kind of password savers on browsers or browser extensions. I use the manager solely.
Right.
What about virus packages? What do you recommend?
Oh, good question. Good question.
It wasn't my question. That was a news question. So.
Perfect. Okay. I have another presentation, and it's more or less geared more towards IT. Some of the information shared back and forth, but going off the top of my head. So when I grew up, the important stuff to have on your computer was a word processor, so Microsoft Word, and some kind of virus protection. And then everybody assumed, okay, you're set, no problem. You got your virus protection, you're all good. You can go wherever you want. It is now to the point where virus protection is not a good enough protection scheme. And so what they're moving towards is, going from memory, it is EPP and EPR or ERP. And what this stands for is endpoint protection, and something like endpoint reaction, something along those lines. And what it means is now virus scan companies aren't just releasing a virus scan, they're also releasing programs that look at the activity on your computer. And an easy example of this is, you come in the morning at 8 o'clock, you turn your computer on, and you go to Gmail to log in, and you go to Microsoft Word to work on a document. That's normal. The program, the virus scan and the endpoint protection suite would look at that and say, okay, this is normal. And when something off the wall happens, like you supposedly come into work at midnight and you go to the network and you start searching on the network, that's weird activity. And so now the newest virus scan companies are also dealing with threats that way. It's like active monitoring of threat activities. So yes.
So that makes sense. Do you have one you recommend, or you can't mention names?
Yeah, I can't recommend. However, I actually had this question and I had to research a bit. And so I'm looking at stuff and I'm wondering, well, who's gonna, what companies have this? Every single well-known virus scan company will have an EPP component, and they'll also have other activity components. And the good thing is, someone was looking for an answer. Well, hey, should I switch to this, or is this a good company? I couldn't say a company, but I offered, if you are currently working with a virus scan company and you're happy with them and you like the way that they update their software and you're familiar with them, inquire with them and see if they have an additional thing. $10 says they'll have something additional. They'll be able to roll it out. The money increase is not going to be substantial, and you'll be even further protected.
So the EPP is an upgrade.
Yeah, the mindset is different. A virus scan has a bunch of pictures of what a virus would look like. And if nothing matches those pictures, it says, sure, go ahead. And endpoint protection looks at the activities that certain things are doing. So what a certain program is doing, if the program is acting funny in the eyes of an endpoint protection system. And they have their algorithms, like you don't have to know that background on all that. They have their algorithms to determine if something is odd or regular.
Okay, great.
So Sean, here's a use case. I'm a business owner. I've got 50 employees, or between 150 and 100. What kind of thing have you seen? What from a business owner strategy standpoint? All my employees have iPhones, you know, or some smartphone, whatever, and they're bringing it to work, using it for work. God knows what access they have from the computers like that. What are some of the concrete things that you've seen small business people do to reduce their risk?
Perfect. Above and beyond, like I mentioned in the PowerPoints, make sure make sure the software is updated, especially if everyone uses iOS. iOS makes it easy. When the updates come out, there's a big fanfare. Okay, news media pushes it and says, iOS 14.05 is out. Make sure you download this. Everybody is recommending downloading it. You'll have lists of all the bugs that it fixes. But the point is, you still need to make sure your employees download it. The next step is this. Are those devices their own personal devices? Or are they?
Let's say yes for now. Let's say yes.
If they are, an appropriate answer might be to make sure you have policies in place that say, if you access our network, it needs to be on a fully updated device. If they are devices that are owned by the company and distributed by the company, along with the device, you should have mobile data management, I think MDM software. And the software allows an IT department to actually push updates to all of those devices.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to.
Some companies have ransomware packages and some have antivirus packages. Do you have to get both, or antivirus package have both in them?
Good question. So I believe that the majority of companies will have packages for all of those. It would be a virus package, a ransomware package, an endpoint protection package. There's a couple of other things like that. They're highly specialized. One would be like a network monitoring package. But the point is, for each package, as you add it on, typically the price does not increase too much. And if you have the ability, or if your data is more valuable than you would spend on the security, then it would be beneficial to just buy all of those packages and have them. Because if you buy them and then you don't have to pay a $10 million ransom, your investment in the IT stuff paid off.
Okay, and do you know if it's safe to keep your credit card number stored in some of these sites? That's my personal question, by the way. No one typed that in, but.
Okay, let's put it this way. The difference between storing my card and having to type in the 16 digits takes me a couple of seconds.
I know.
I type my digits in all the time. And this is the reason why. Maybe 2 years back, I purchased a sewing machine. It was a $2,900 sewing machine. Guess what I don't do?
Sew.
I don't sew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I purchased this on, I think it was eBay or Amazon, and I saw the email come in and I said, oh, no, I didn't purchase that.
Yeah.
I called the company. I told them, hey, don't ship this. I don't want to have to deal with return shipping. I called, if it was eBay, I called eBay and said, hey, look, I didn't buy this. Can you do something with it? And they said, yeah, we saw it come in. We already took care of it. But the reason why it went through was 2 years ago, I still had a card on there. So I removed all my cards and I typed them in manually.
Good advice. Good advice. So going back to the antivirus package real quick, Sean, is it safe to have two antivirus packages from two different companies on your computer?
I have heard that this would be a bad idea. You have you have two different, let's say you have two different packages of software that are both trying to monitor for changes in the system. Well, if one is looking and said, oh, hey, what's going on there? Why is that one changing that file? And the other one says, hey, why is that program looking at those files? They tend to fight, and then you'll get false positives. So one virus software, and also because we were talking about virus scan software and a ransomware package, typically I recommend staying in the same company for all of those because they work together.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That is all the written questions we have. Tom, let me just double check. Yeah, we're good. So kind of went over time a little bit, but I think it was so important to do that. So Sean, thank you so much for all that valuable information.
Perfect. I have one last question. As a parent, right, with multiple kids using multiple devices, am I at risk and not even know it? Have you seen anything where kids are using my address or sometimes my email, or I gave them my login or something? I'm not even sure the question I'm asking, but are my children an extension of my security, I guess, in this
Yeah,
realm?
you could look at it that way. Do they homeschool?
No.
Okay, so
mine are grown, but they have young kids, right? But there may be a situation where they are home. All right, there may be other parents that have kids that are home.
Yep. Couple of things. So when COVID happened, everybody went home. Kids went home, schooling from home. But it happened with my daughter too. They said, okay, here's a device, here's a computer, whoop, right out the door, and didn't really do too much anything else. Problem is, because I knew what I was looking for, I made sure everything was updated. I made sure that she didn't have any kind of funny sites or the ability to do any kind of changes on our own house network. Those are the kinds of things that open up your attack surface a little bit more. Like I mentioned, fully updated stuff plugs the majority of security holes. Changing default usernames and passwords solves the rest of it.
Got it. It just strikes me every time we go through this, how these simple things can have such far-reaching.
Right? I know.
I remember when my 22-year-old came home and she was so excited because she had discovered this. I won't name the program. This software that can coordinate all your banking and manage your budget and all your expenses. And I went like, oh my God, you put your banking. Yep. I mean, wide open. Now I got it. Convenience. I got it. Right. Understood. But I had to go through this. I had to go through this risk reward thing. And, oh, Dad, you get that. But I think after it hits them, which it did, it only has to happen once. And man, you become aware very quickly.
So, I hear it.
So Sean, you're not reading the chat, but I just want to let you know there's a lot of compliments, and thank you for the very important information.
Yes.
Hold on, let's see this.
And even someone asking if you write checks at the counter too.
Nice. I see it all. All right. Robert, Amy, Crystal, you got it. Who else is on here?
Right. That's great.
Okay, so Tom, if you have any closing comments.
Yeah, we could do an exercise. This would be great. This would be a great tabletop, Sean, right? Because while you were talking, I've been pwned, boom, 3 new ones, right? The last time I did this, I had 3. I got rid of those. And so I got 3 new ones. I didn't even know what Cafe Express, I didn't know what the heck that is, right? But I'm sure it had something to do with we were traveling and needed a cup of coffee. I don't know.
Totally. Yep. Sounds like a coffee shop.
So, oh Lord, Sean, thank you. I just love things that are simple and practical, right? This is great, right? And especially as small business people, this is a big deal because most of them, the owners, the cook, the bottle washer, the IT person, they don't have the staff to do some of this. So I think it's really, really valuable. And again, this probably for you probably gets updated often, right? So we'll have you back again. I'm glad we took the time today to get into details behind it. So.
Sean, are your slides, I guess we screenshot a bunch of it, but are they public?
I forgot to mention this caveat at the beginning. So they can't be posted publicly. You can make them available to members of your own agency. and they just can't be used for any kind of commercial type stuff.
Yeah, they can't be posted. They can be emailed to registrants of this, but they can't be posted online.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that accurate? Okay. Yeah, we run into this a lot with other federal agencies and things like that. So.
And are you okay? A couple of people have asked about the recording, sharing the link with them, because it's such important information to share.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, wonderful. So that should answer most people's questions. And then I just wanted to, again, Sean, say thank you so much for teaching this very valuable webinar. And to our listeners, thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions regarding this or any other training that All Hazards Consortium does, feel free to email me at laura.johnson@ahcusa.org. We're always looking for great speakers as well. So reach out to us, let us know what you want to share, and we'd love to work with you. Other than that, this ends today's webinar. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sean.
And one more thing, I've been working on this all day. We're all in this together. So may the 4th be with you.
Thanks, Sean.
Very good.
All
Very
right.
good.
See ya.
All right. See you
On
all.
that note, bye, guys.